Center and certifications.
Training center and certification. Very good one. Training center certification. Okay. Last wish.
Billing API. API for billing.
For billing. Ah, okay. API for billing. Okay. So you mean basically being able to access your billing information. Your own, right? Okay, good. Okay, fine. So now let's move it to something more specific, a little bit more technical, but not too much. Because I know you might have a very technical question, but I don't want to lose half of the audience. So let's do this. What do you think is the best way to, how to say that, to justify the adoption of cloud computing? So why do you think that cloud computing is so interesting today? I gave you economic reasons, like pay as you go, pay only for what you use, no capex. I gave you some technical reasons, flexibility, etc. But of course, at the end of the day, companies adopt new technologies, or relatively new technologies or paradigms, because for them it makes sense. Because they save money, because they're more competitive on the market. That's their drive. So even if you might be like a geek, or you might like technology, maybe you do it just because you like it. In most cases, decisions are made after very careful considerations of reasons why that company should do that specific move. So let's imagine that now we want to be a little bit skeptical about the cloud. How would you explain why companies should at least get more interested in the cloud? What do you think? You want to answer this first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, elasticity. So if you are building a multi-tenant SaaS application, for example, you will either have to provision for the worst case scenario, which could be, during a slash dart effect, it could be huge. Right, so you will be spending so much number of servers buying, and the other one could be because of growth needs. Today you have 100 customers. You don't know whether your business is going to succeed, which means it might result in millions, or it might result in thousands. So you don't want to again buy for that.
Okay, so elasticity. Okay, anyone else? One here in the back. Just pass it on.
I think it's the ability to innovate in infrastructure. When you start up or when you have a project or an idea or something, the first thing that you should not worry about is the infrastructure. With cloud computing, I can innovate and think ways of eliminating infrastructure out of my things to worry and focus on my core idea. So which means like if I want to try out, before going ahead and trying out my idea, I would kind of validate it by using the infrastructure for some time. And then if there's an adoption, then I can go big. There are multiple ways of innovating. So that's something that can be a drive tool.
Okay. So it reminds me of something that I read yesterday. I don't know if you ever heard of Hipmunk, HIPMUNK. It's a very small startup, American startup. They get funded by Y Combinator, which is a VC in New York City. I think they were funded with like 50K, like a very small amount of money. They run 100% on AWS. And this is a website that allows you to book flights and other things with a very, very nice interface. And the founder, actually there was an exchange of tweets between the founder and our CTO, Werner Vogels, which is very active on Twitter. So he said, I like Hipmunk because the interface is so intuitive and very nice. And their CEO, I guess, or founder, replied with something like, we're happy that you like it. And by the way, it was made possible by AWS because we are using you guys, something like this. And it was interesting. Then I've read, I think, a small article commenting this thing. And they were saying that they needed only 50K, so very, very small amount of funding. Usually startups ask for hundreds of thousands of dollars, not $50,000, which is, by the way, the exact amount of the Startup Challenge prize, just randomly. So they were able to do this because the infrastructure cost for them is very small, minimal. Because now, well, they get a lot of traffic, still, of course, a small startup, but they don't really pay a lot for infrastructure. And if they are successful, which actually they're being successful now, they had a very good result in terms of publicity online because the interface is so intuitive. So they already scaled up a little bit, and they were able to do it very easily. So I agree a lot with you on this fact. I think it's very important. Any other comment on this, or maybe a question on something else? Like you hear, there's a question there. Yeah. After that, I will tell you something. Yes.
My name is Badri.
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 Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Now we have in the process of developing a portal for ourselves.
Portal. Yes.
Yeah. And what we really want to do now is to host it somewhere, okay, and see how it goes. And then if the response is excellent, then we would like to move it to a platform like AWS. Now, what I want to really know from you is this a seamless process, or are there a lot of ifs and buts?
Okay, that's a very good question. This goes back to actually a set of slides that I published recently on SlideShare, which is architecting for the cloud. And this goes also to the scenario in which you have an existing application or portal, or maybe you are creating one, and then you are planning of moving it to the cloud. So let me share with you a few things, a few key elements. Actually, if you go on SlideShare, you look for architecting for the cloud, or maybe just my name, you're able to find these slides. So it's probably worth looking at these slides afterwards. So anyway, this is the concept. The cloud is slightly different than a traditional environment. And one of the reasons is, in a traditional environment, you were used to not to think of increasing the efficiency of your hardware usage, but you were usually over-provisioning the amount of hardware necessary for that specific project. Which means, in most cases, you didn't have to scale because you already had more than enough capacity. And again, in many other cases, it wasn't really necessary to scale in a wide range of let's say, capacity. Because if you have, for example, an internal app and you have 100 employees, if you grow and your company becomes 200 employees, roughly speaking, you have to scale your capacity just twice, which is, let's say, doable in most cases without too much pain. So let's say in the old times, let's say years ago, it was not this difficult to do it, provided that you had a lot of over-provisioned hardware. And then companies realized, especially CFOs, realized, I think we're spending too much into this hardware thing. I think we should find ways to optimize. And then the virtualization came in, and that allowed a lot of companies to increase the efficiency. But when you increase the efficiency, it happens that you have less room for expansion. Because if you are using your machines at 10% efficiency, you can scale twice without even noticing it. You go from 10 to 20% usage, that's fine. If your efficiency grows and gets to 40% or 50%, which are numbers that you can get to with virtualization if you do it properly, and consolidation as well, then it's much more difficult to scale. Because, hey, wait a minute, I need more hardware. These machines can't really get twice as much load as before. And so this is probably one of the reasons why when you think about the cloud, you have to do this simple consideration before moving anything. Is your application, is your portal, is your software ready for the cloud? Excuse me, can you avoid this noise? Thank you. So, is it ready? And in ready, it means if it needs to scale, how is it going to scale? For example, if you have a web server, it's very easy to scale because the web server, the way it works, it's easy to say I add more servers, maybe I load balance these servers. It's relatively easy. If I need sessions, that's a little bit more complicated because I need to make sure that session stickiness is guaranteed. Because if that customer logs in into his bank, I want to make sure that I talk with the same customer when he says, I need to add $300 to my account. That should be the same customer. So I need session stickiness to be able to do this. But that's doable and that's relatively simple. There are other things that are not easily portable to the cloud without at least a small change. If your application is a client-server application, it's not easy, not immediate to just move it to the cloud and make it work right away. It might need some re-engineering. So, and this is, to be very frank, one of the few cases in which sometimes it's not good to move to the cloud right away. Because maybe the product you want to move is not exactly ready for the cloud. But then there is a counter answer to that, which is, okay, look at all your IT assets. Maybe this particular product doesn't fit the cloud well yet, but what about all the others? Because in any company, there is always a 20-30% sweet spot that can be easily moved to the cloud and reap the most benefits. Maybe because of increased efficiency. One good example for you, well, a few good examples. Disaster recovery. I was talking about this like a few minutes before the event. Disaster recovery is incredibly popular in the cloud. And what is the reason for this? Because in a traditional scenario, when you want to do disaster recovery, for people that don't know this, means being able to reactivate the services in the case of a disaster. Being able to get back in online status after a disaster occurs. So, for example, if you have some servers that provide some kind of service on the internet and something bad happens to your data center, what is your DR, your disaster recovery policy? Well, we have an additional data center in a different place that takes over, so basically takes the functionalities of the original one and provides them to your customers. So the service is restored in a reasonable amount of time. So disaster recovery, of course, needs the amount of time to be reasonable. Otherwise, you say, well, I'll buy new servers, deploy them, and in a few months I'm going to be operational again. That's not a reasonable amount of time. So it should be reasonable. Why disaster recovery is so popular in the cloud? Because instead of buying twice as much hardware as you need, or sometimes 3 times as much, you might still have the original hardware, the running one, on-premise. That's fine. And then you say, I want to implement a DR policy. Option 1 is I buy very expensive hardware and put it somewhere else and manage it. Option 2 is I do it in the cloud. And in the cloud, the only thing that you need is to synchronize your data with the original data often enough, depending on the kind of data. But if you have 10 machines here running databases, to synchronize 200 gigabytes of storage in the cloud, you just need one machine that every hour takes data and updates the database. Takes data and updates the database. So you spend a very small amount of money. If a disaster occurs, you have machines, AMIs, disk images, ready to be launched. And so you can have a fleet of machines in a few minutes ready to take over the original set of machines. So disaster recovery is very, very, very cost effective in the cloud. And so it's very popular. And there are many other verticals in which the cloud is such a compelling and interesting solution, an alternative to traditional solutions. So my suggestion would be, for the specific use case you mentioned, think of first if you need to scale. If you don't need to scale, just move it, very easy. If you do need to scale, think of how your application will scale, because maybe it will not scale well in the cloud. Second, in general, look at all your assets. There are some sweet spots, DR, backups, and other things that are very good fit for the cloud. So instead of focusing on a single thing that maybe doesn't fit well, focus on the easiest one and reap the benefits. And with that, you go back to your CEO, I saved you money, you see? Good, bravo. Now do something else to save me more money. Well, what about this? Yes, go. So you can get recognition from your boss or manager, and then keep doing this more and more because you're building on your success. Okay? One question here. Stand up, name, and question.
This is Prabhuraj.
Yes.